April 30th, 1943. Off the Spanish coast, a British submarine surfaced in total darkness. On the deck, sailors carried a steel canister. Inside lay a man in the uniform of a Royal Marines major. He was dead, his eyes closed. A briefcase was chained tightly to his wrist. This dead man was not a victim of war. He was a weapon, the most astonishing deception weapon ever conceived. He was about to fool Hitler's high command, redirect entire panzer divisions, and save tens of thousands of lives. All without drawing a single breath. The man had no name that the world would know for 50 years. He was a homeless Welsh drifter who had died in a forgotten warehouse. But in his death, he became Major William Martin, the spy who never lived. This is the true, almost unbelievable story of Operation Mincemeat. By 1943, the Allies were winning in North Africa. The next logical target was Sicily, the stepping stone into Italy. But Sicily was a fortress. The Germans had reinforced the island with crack troops, pillboxes, and minefields. Churchill knew a direct invasion would cost far too many lives. The only hope was to make Hitler look away. The Germans had to be convinced that the real invasion would strike Greece and Sardinia. So the Allies turned to a secret deception unit in London, the 20 Committee. Inside a smoke-filled room, Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montague and squadron leader Charles Cholmondeley brainstormed an idea so wild it seemed like fiction. Cholmondeley had recalled a memo from 2 years earlier, a memo written by an intelligence officer named Ian Fleming. Yes, the creator of James Bond. It listed 51 ways to deceive the enemy. Number 28 was simple: a corpse dressed as an airman, with dispatches in his pockets. The idea had been sitting on a shelf. Now it was the only chance. They codenamed it Operation Mincemeat. The plan was so audacious that Churchill himself had to approve it. He did so with a grim smile. The first step was the most macabre: find a body. The corpse needed to look like a victim of a plane crash at sea. So no bullet wounds, no obvious disease. He had to be a man of military age with no family to mourn him. After a desperate search, they found him in the St. Pancras mortuary. Glyndwr Michael, 34 years old, a drifter from Aberbargod, Wales. He had drifted to London, fallen into despair, and swallowed rat poison in an abandoned warehouse. He died alone, without identification, leaving no trace. The coroner, Bentley Purchase, was told only that the body was needed for a vital military operation. He agreed. Glyndwr Michael was about to become the most important corpse of the Second World War. They built a new identity from scratch. He would be Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. Every detail had to be perfect. They dressed him in a Royal Marines uniform, taking care to make it look lived in. A photograph was needed for his ID card. The body was already stiff with rigor mortis. They propped him up, opened his eyes, and snapped the picture. The result was chilling: a dead-eyed man who looked every bit the weary officer. Then, they gave him a personality, a fiancée named Pam, based on a real secretary, Jean Leslie. Her photo in a swimsuit went into his wallet. Love letters full of tender concern. "Darling, please don't let them send you into anything too dangerous." Jean Leslie was terrified that a German agent would one day knock on her door. But she played her part: a receipt for an engagement ring, an unpaid tailor's bill, a letter from his stern father, ticket stubs from a London variety show, a key to a flat, a worn banknote. Every object was a breadcrumb that would lead German intelligence to a single, devastating false conclusion. This man was genuine, and his mission was critical. Now, the briefcase. It had to contain plans so explosive that Hitler would be forced to act. Montague himself drafted 2 letters. The first, from General Sir Archibald Nye to General Harold Alexander, discussed upcoming operations. It casually mentioned that the Allies would invade Greece under Operation Mincemeat and Sardinia under Operation Brimstone. It implied that Sicily was merely a diversion. The second, from Lord Louis Mountbatten, introduced Major Martin as an expert in amphibious warfare and joked about sardines as a reward after the landings. The letters were handwritten on official stationery, complete with the correct salutations, military jargon, and even a fake grumble about American generals. They were deadly fakes. On April 17, 1943, the body was dressed in a trench coat, a life jacket, and a battle dress. The briefcase was locked to his wrist with a leather-covered chain. He was placed inside a canister packed with dry ice to slow decomposition. That night, he was driven to the Scottish lock where the submarine HMS Seraph waited. Her captain, Lieutenant Bill Jewell, was briefed on the true mission. The rest of the crew thought they were transporting a top-secret meteorological device. The Seraph slipped into the Atlantic and sailed south. For 10 days, Major Martin lay in the freezing torpedo room. The tension was unbearable. Decomposition was beginning. The smell was seeping through the canister. A junior officer became suspicious and asked the captain what was inside. Jewell lied smoothly. A new type of weather balloon, highly classified. The officer backed away. The submarine pressed on. Finally, on the night of April 29th, they reached the Gulf of Cadiz. At 4:15 a.m. on April 30th, 1943, under a thin crescent moon, the Seraph surfaced off the coast of Huelva. The crew brought the canister onto the deck. They lifted the body, still wearing the life jacket, and placed it gently on the surface of the water. Captain Jewell read a short prayer. Then, he gave the order. The corpse was rolled into the sea. The tide began to carry Major Martin towards the shore. The submarine vanished beneath the waves. The die was cast. Hours later, a Spanish fisherman named José Antonio Rey María spotted a dark shape floating near Punta Umbria. He hauled it to shore. The man wore a British uniform. A briefcase was chained to his arm. The fisherman alerted the local Guardia Civil. Soon, the Spanish naval authorities were on the scene. Spain was officially neutral, but its government leaned towards the Axis. The secret police tipped off the Abwehr, station in Huelva. A German agent, Adolf Klaus, rushed to the port. He bribed a Spanish naval officer to open the briefcase before it was officially sealed. The letters were carefully photographed, page by page. Then the briefcase was resealed and returned to the British naval attaché as if nothing had happened. But the bait had already been swallowed. In London, the 20 committee waited in agony. A coded signal arrived. Mincemeat swallowed whole. The body had been found. The documents had been copied. But the true test was only beginning. Would Berlin believe it? The photographs were rushed to the Abwehr's headquarters. Chief Analyst Colonel Alexis von Roen scrutinized every detail. The handwriting, the paper, the military terminology. Von Roen was secretly anti-Nazi, and some historians believe he deliberately endorsed the forgery to harm Hitler's war effort. Whether through skill or sabotage, he stamped the intelligence as genuine. The documents were then passed to the Führer. Hitler read the letters personally. He saw in them the proof he had feared, an Allied invasion of the Balkans. On May 12, 1943, he issued Führer Directive No. 94. Measures regarding Sardinia and the Peloponnese take precedence over everything else. He ordered the 1st Panzer Division to move from France to Greece. He sent fresh divisions to Sardinia and Corsica. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel was dispatched to inspect the new defenses in Greece. In Sicily, the Axis forces were thinned, their best troops siphoned away. The trap was set. On July 9, 1943, the Allies launched Operation Husky. An invasion fleet of over 3,000 ships descended on the southern coast of Sicily. Paratroopers landed behind enemy lines. The German defenders, outnumbered and mispositioned, crumbled. Within days, the island fell. The deception had worked. The butcher's bill that Churchill had feared never came. Operation Mincemeat had saved thousands of Allied lives, and opened the road to Rome. Major William Martin was buried with full military honors in the Cemetery of Solitude in Huelva. The Spanish government, still cooperating, allowed a funeral with a firing party. A simple marble headstone was erected. It gave no hint that this was the grave of a man who had never truly lived as a major. For decades, the identity of the body remained a secret. In 1996, an amateur historian, Roger Morgan, dug through old coroner's records and discovered the name Glyndwr Michael. The forgotten homeless man was finally revealed. In 1997, a new plaque was added to his grave. Glyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin, REM. Today, that grave in Huelva stands under the Spanish sun. A man who had nothing, who died in despair and solitude, had become the most improbable hero of the war. His body, his silence, his unwitting sacrifice deceived the mightiest war machine in history. He never fired a shot, never spoke a word of deception. Yet he changed the fate of nations. Operation Mincemeat reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of courage are performed by those who are no longer there to see them. In the end, a dead man saved the living, and that is a truth stranger than any spy novel.